All right, I want to welcome all of you to our first PolarConnect event for, I can safely say, for the year 2020 and year 2021. It's been a while since we've had these events, and so we're very excited that teacher Liza Backman is in the field, and literally they are in the field today up at Toolik Field Station in Alaska. We have a lot to learn from this team today. This event is being recorded, and so if you have to check out before the end of this event, we will send an archive and post it on the website, a link to the archive on the website as well. So with that, a little bit about the program. Next slide, please, Liza. As I said, this team is at Toolik Field Station in Alaska. There's a bunch of you joining from around the United States and probably other places as well. We'd like to kind of get a sense of who is joining us. So if you have a moment, please introduce yourself in the chat box and tell us where you're joining from today. Next slide. This event is hosted by the Arctic Research Consortium of the United States. We're a nonprofit that's based primarily in Fairbanks, Alaska, with people that work all around the United States. Liza is participating in a program called PolarTrek, where we place educators with scientists like Dr. Jeremy May in the background there, in field locations in the Arctic and the Antarctic. Due to COVID, we have not deployed educators with researchers for since 2019. Liza is our first person that's been deployed this year to the Arctic. So this is a big moment for all of us to be listening to what she's been doing and the science that she's participating in up there in the Arctic. And during this presentation, next slide, you can post your questions in the chat box. And as Liza is sharing her screen and telling us about the research and her experience, we will interrupt as well and ask those questions. And also at the end of the presentation, we'll let you ask your questions live as well. So if you have any technical issues as you go along, myself, Janet Warburton, and Judy Fonstock, we both work at ARCIS here and run the PolarTrek program. We'll be happy to try to address them in the chat room, so you can send us a direct message as we go along. And I think that's it. Like I said, I'm really excited that Liza's here. I'm going to have her introduce herself and the team. And with that, I'm turning it over to you, Liza.
Hi, welcome everyone. It's so nice to see everyone. Hi, Hannah, I see you. I saw some people that wasn't necessarily expecting, people from my undergrad and so on and so forth. Thank you everyone for joining us. We are in the field right now and sitting right in front of Toolik Lake. It's, I don't know, like 70 degrees outside. It's actually one of the first few days. Actually, yesterday was the first day of really warm weather, and today is our second day of really nice weather, and we haven't gotten any mosquitoes out yet, so we're glad for you to join us out here. I'm Liza. I'm a high school teacher. I teach at Brooklyn Emerging Leaders Academy, or BELLA for short, in Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, although I'm located in Queens in New York City. And then I have a background that kind of bounces all over the place. So if you were to ask me my hometown, I normally don't give one specific, but my family is tuning in from Lafayette, Alabama, which is outside of Auburn, which is where I spent most of my life growing up. So that's my background. And I currently teach chemistry and earth science, and so I was really excited to come up to the polar regions to learn more about what people are doing up here. And with that, I think Jeremy is going to introduce himself.
Okay. So I'm Jeremy May. I'm an assistant research professor at Florida International University. Although I don't live in Miami, I actually live in Grand Rapids, Michigan. But I've been coming up to the Arctic since 2007, and specifically to Toolik Lake since my first season was 2013, and then full seasons since 2015, minus 2020, of course. But yeah, so we're excited to get things rolling again after 2020 and get everything going. And the weather, as you can see, is gorgeous. The midges are out. So we know that the mosquitoes are coming, but we haven't quite got to that point yet. So everybody's talking about it, but as in kind of an ominous way. So
We're placing bets on when the mosquitoes will show up.
it'll be soon.
It'll be soon. All right. And next up, I put in Steve is on the call with us. Steve, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm Steve Oberbar. I'm professor and chair of biology at Florida International University in Miami, Florida. And I just got back from Barrow yesterday at about 2 p.m. Welcome to big thunderstorms and 3 potential tropical storms out there, which is part of the reason why I wanted to get back. Although I'm going back up again after Liza leaves, but yeah, so I've been working at Toolik since 1985 and long time. And so Jeremy's been kind of managing all the long-term field work that we've been doing at Toolik. Well, we're working on the Arctic Observing Network program, and we're affiliated also with the International Tundra Experiment. So we blended these two programs that are an experiment and observation in together to make this long-term program that's providing background data on how the vegetation is changing and the properties of the vegetation are changing in the Arctic as the climate warms, and also as we do experimental warming in open-top chambers, which are a small passive warming device. I guess there's not going to be any pictures of those. Maybe Liza has some pictures, but yeah, so anyways. That's me in the tundra mode, and this is me in the back home from Alaska mode. And that picture of me hunched over the computer at the weather station was looking like, oh my God, who is that guy? Who is hunched over trying to read the screen in the bright sun.
Yes, and Steve was with us for the first week, getting us all set up for all of the stuff that we're running this summer. And then went up to Barrow, where there's another group. I think Mackenzie and that group is also tuning in. So we have stations. There are stations in both Toolik and Barrow. Are there other places?
And in Akasuk.
And in Akasuk. So we've got a lot of different places. And Steve went up to help set that group up and is now back. And I think, Steve, you're headed out next to the Everglades.
Yeah, I'm on a helicopter trip out to the Everglades tomorrow.
Yeah, so Steve has a full summer load, but it was really nice to have him with us, and I'm glad that you're on the call with us as well.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's good to see all these people.
All right, and our third person is Sarah, the Berry Fairy. You want to introduce yourself, Sarah?
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah. I'm going into my second year master's student at Grand Valley State in Michigan. It is my first time ever in the tundra, so I'm very excited and very happy to be here with all of you. For my thesis, I'm interested in studying the properties of berry production and predicting berry production over time using climate. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but yeah.
So if you ever see us like doing this motion, we have this set up with a chair, and then there's some wind going on. So we set up something in the background to help with the microphone, but it's a little teetering. So every now and then we're a little worried that it's going to knock over.
It sounds fancier than it is. We really have a big piece of plywood with loose wood bracing it behind us.
So if we randomly like jump to grab the computer, it's just because it's gonna fall over soon. All right, so yes, so Sarah and I, it's our first time here together. So we'll be sharing our experiences of coming up here and what that's been like. So just to give you a sense of like where everyone is from and where we went to, this is a map I created on Google Maps. The purple home is where I'm from, so New York City. Blue is in Michigan, which is actually both Jeremy and Sarah are in Michigan right now. And then orange is Miami, where Steve is currently. And we journeyed up. I think all of us flew into Fairbanks. I stopped in Seattle. Where did you guys stop?
We stopped in Seattle. Yeah.
Also in Seattle. I think Steve also, did you stop
I
in Seattle
stopped
or
in
was it
Dallas.
Texas?
I went directly from Miami, Dallas, Fairbanks.
Okay, so we all had a layover somewhere along the way. And then we stopped in Fairbanks, which is the green P circle, before driving up to Toolik, which is the star red. Toolik is above the Arctic Circle, so we are currently in the 24 hours of daylight time. And it's been very sunny. And when is the next day we're getting nighttime?
It's late July. It's like the first sunset's like the
July 16th. So people are already counting down for our first sunset. I won't be here. I'll be back in New York having plenty of sunsets. But so people are definitely already counting down for that. But yes, we all flew up. I think over all of that time, it was like at least 10 hours of flights to get up here, roughly. And then we entered into the glorious time period of quarantine, which was new this year. So I think normally, how long do you stay in Fairbanks before you come up?
less than 12 hours.
Okay, so normally they spend less than 12 hours. Due to COVID and all these new restrictions, we had to spend 2 weeks in quarantine. Steve is much more powerful than us because he's going to come back up and do that quarantine again in the next few weeks. But we were staying at resort, the Wedgwood Resort. During that time, I was still virtually teaching, which ended up being wonderful because Sarah and Jeremy both were able to join in for some of my classes. So you can see in the upper right corner, there's a picture of us on Zoom doing presentations with my earth science class. Sarah did a wonderful presentation with my IB Chem students about what it's like going through science and going through science as a woman. And so it was really nice. And yeah, Janet was saying it's a really pretty area for quarantining. We definitely were going on walks every day around the lake that was back there. There was always something to do, but mostly it was kind of a little crazy just sitting there all the time.
Yeah.
We had lots of, what was your quarantine show of choice?
Aerial America on Smithsonian.
Aerial America on Smithsonian is the quarantine show. What was yours? Did you have a show of choice?
Finding Bigfoot.
Finding Bigfoot
Watched a lot
was
of that.
Sarah's choice. I feel like I did a lot of Office reruns because that's what was on, like, primarily. So we got our 3 choices for quarantine shows because we had to stay sane somehow while we were in there. But it was really important because once we come up here, this is a really small group of people that are in the field station. And if one person gets COVID, it's fairly likely that everyone else will also get it. And to come up, we took the Dalton Highway. So for me, this was the first moment where I felt like, woo, it's time. Like, we're doing Arctic things.
Me too.
Yeah, like up until then, it was like there had just been a big pause button because we came and I was like, I saw the mountains in the flight on the way down into Fairbanks, and then it was on pause for a week. So getting onto the Dalton Highway was the big moment of like, it's time to actually go and do Arctic field work. For those of you who don't know, the Dalton Highway connects Fairbanks, or it's right outside of Fairbanks, and goes all the way up to Prudhoe Bay. We go about, what, 2/3 of the way?
Yeah.
2/3 of the way up to Toolik Field Station, although since then we have been pretty much all the way up and down like twice now-ish. And Sarah will be going again up and down for more berry stuff in the fall. It is known as one of the more dangerous roads because for the most part, it's just a dirt road. And especially in the winter, it can get very icy. So if you are interested in another TV show that I don't think I've watched, have you watched it? Oh, some people have watched it. I haven't watched it. It's called Ice Road Truckers on National Geo. What channel is it on?
I have no idea.
Okay, the show is called Ice Road Truckers, and it's all about the Dalton Highway and all of the jams that they get into, because it can be a very dangerous road, but it's also a very beautiful road. It's got a lot of wildlife. Probably the scariest part going up Adigan Pass. On the bottom left, you see that beautiful. When you turn back and look, you see this beautiful valley behind you. I know Jeremy was driving, so
Yeah,
Jeremy was
wasn't
not looking at it. And then you get all these beautiful, like we've seen caribou along the highway, muskox. There was a wolverine that we saw. That was really cool. I have never seen a wolverine move before, and they have a very interesting movement pattern. So yeah, that was super exciting. Was just going up and down the Dalton Highway. So from there, we've gotten to our station, which is Toolik Field Station. We've been here now for 3 or 4 weeks.
2.5.
The time here is different.
I think it was 2 yesterday.
The
No,
time
2
here
today.
it was 2 last week because I did laundry last week. Yeah,
Oh.
It's 3.
it's 3.
Okay,
I'm
never
not
mind. I
okay.
have no idea.
Okay, so time moves differently here because it's kind of like a different experience at this point, because everyone's gone through the 14-day quarantine. There are different rules regarding COVID. I kind of sometimes forget that it exists until I go on social media and I'm interacting with other people about it. Yeah, Judy said, how you measure time at Toolik by laundry loads. So yes, so there are restrictions here, but yes, so we've been here since we came up. And Steve, can you tell me, when was Toolik like actually formed? I didn't put this on the slide. When was
I
it
think
founded?
that Toolik, I think maybe the first season up there was either 1977 or 76. I think it actually was investigated in 75, and I actually have a picture of the team from the wall at Toolik. And I don't know if that picture is still up on the wall in the communication room, but there's a picture of Phil Miller, who was my master's advisor, and I think Pat Weber, John Hobby, and Vera Komarkova, and maybe somebody else. Oh, yeah, the guy from University of Cincinnati, Mike, not Murphy, I can't remember, it begins with M. Anyway, they were looking for a lake that they could do aquatic research on, primarily one that was a good sized lake, but not contaminated. And there's a lake just south of Toolik, a really big one called Galbraith Lake that has an airstrip that's intact, but that had a big gas spill. And so that was declined as an option. So in the very beginning at Toolik in the late 70s, they were just living in, they had one little trailer, and then people lived in tents. And then a couple of years later, they dragged up an Atco trailer that was kind of the lab. And then in like 83 or something, it used to be on the runway, which was on another section. And then they moved it over to the current site, which was the dump for the Toolik pump station, the Toolik work camp. So Toolik was a work camp during the pipeline construction period from 74 to 76. So I think they actually first started in 77 is what I think they started.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's been around for quite a while, and I'm sure it's been developed since then. We actually just got a new baby building put in 3 days ago, a new medical center that's being put in that was delivered a few days ago. It won't be up and running until next year, but it's being built out. It's run by the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and it houses a maximum of 150, am I right? 150 researchers. Although this year the maximum due to COVID restrictions is around 80, which I think we're getting in 2 weeks, we'll hit the maximum. Dennis was telling us that this morning. So it'll be full, but not necessarily that big. And someone put the link in for the station history and all of this. So a quick tour around T-Town. There are basically two main areas. We've got the residential area, which has some dorms. Sarah and I stay in a dorm called Raven. Jeremy stays in the fancy dorm called Cotton Grass. There are weather ports, which are like tents.
Yeah, they're
sort of
glorified tents.
They're glorified tents that are like heated, and they have inside bedding and all of this stuff.
That's where Caroline's staying. Caroline is over there currently.
Caroline is over.
You should
she's
pop
gonna
in there
wave
and
in.
say hi.
Hello, everybody.
Caroline's here with us as well.
I'm taking a tundra nap in the peanut gallery.
Yes, and Jeremy says that weather ports are the full experience.
Full Toolik
The
experience.
full
Oh yeah.
Toolik experience.
So
I'm
when
not,
it sounds like it's raining, but it's really mosquitoes hitting the sides. Yeah.
Cool.
That's
I'm glad
coming.
I'm not experiencing that. That's coming for you
Yeah.
soon. But yes, so they're like the Toolik tent. People talk about Weatherport City because it's a whole line of these weather ports. So that's the picture down at the bottom. You can see they're kind of rounded. They have doors and stuff, but they're glorified tents. One of the things that was exciting about the residential area to me was the fact that there's a gym. It seems kind of like weird that you think about that, but it's really nice to go. We go there pretty much every day, every other day. So that's nice. And then on the work area, which is the side that we're on right now, you have a bunch of big lab buildings. We work out of lab 4, which is the best lab. And in the middle, there's a big dining hall, which is very well known for the snack wall of walls. And there's a community center as well. And if you're interested and you want to see all the pictures, we're not going to take you around right now. But if you want to see these things, you can also watch on my Instagram. I made a TikTok sort of like going through the whole area. So you can look at that. So from now, we're going to go and switch gears and sort of focus more on the science that's going on up here. And we're going to start with phenology, which is kind of the smallest part of, I feel like the projects that go on here, there are like many layers to it. And we'll start with phenology, which is the like really up close scale of what's going on. And I stole the phrase from a different PolarTrek teacher that phenology is the science of when, which I really like that as a, like when things are occurring, when things are blooming, when things are coming out. So part of the nice thing about being out here is that we can look and do phenology as well and look down and see what's blooming and what's not around us. Do you see anything interesting?
Yeah. Well, I don't know how well it'll show up on camera, but
Oh yeah, so here are some
yeah.
flowers. You're not going to see them very well, but these are Arcturus flowers, so bearberry flowers. So a lot of what we do on Tuesdays, actually Sarah will be doing this later today, Tuesdays and Fridays, is we go out and we mark down when we see different things going on. So we have a clipboard and a piece of paper, and Caroline will be coming out too, right?
Mhm.
Caroline's coming out too. And there are 8 species that we monitor specifically, and we just mark down everything that's going on with that. There are specific codes and everything like this. So it actually does, it takes like a full morning to get through everything and to go through this. So it does take a decent amount of time, especially when you're doing everything by hand. We have sort of added to this. I think this is one of the longest running parts of the
it's been
work.
around since the late 90s, I think, right, Steve?
Steve, how long has this been going on?
The seasons.
Yeah, so the season plots have been going on, the phenology, since 1995. And
Oh.
same with the Toolik ITEX experiment also started in 95.
So it's been going, it's the same age as me. It's been going on for 26 years. So we've been monitoring this over the past. We also monitor the greenness, which we do both by eye, because we're trying to keep the same standards that we had when we started doing this, and then also using more up-to-date methods, which is NDVI is the current factor that everyone seems to use as the standard to compare against. So that's for one plot for several of the plots. And then we also have other plots where we have these open top chambers. Jeremy, do you want to talk about the open top chambers?
Yeah, so the open top chambers, or OTCs, are a passive way to warm the Arctic, warm the tundra up. So they're about 1 meter square. There's bigger ones, there's smaller ones, but the ones we use are about 1 meter. And so what they do is they warm the tundra 2 to 3 degrees Celsius, and that allows us to simulate it doesn't simulate warming, it actually warms them, but simulate climate change in the future. So it's kind of like the crystal ball, if you will, looking forward and seeing how the plants respond, seeing how it changes their flowering, how many flowers they have, what the timing is. And yeah, so we kind of do a lot of stuff. So we have Caroline, who's partially working with us and working with what I've referred to as team pollinator, and they are looking at pollination and visitation of pollinators to the flowers. And so there's a whole suite of things that we're doing on these long-term, these projects that started in the 90s, these long-term experiments.
So someone asked a question in the chat box about how they're warmed and if they're warmed electrically. Can you explain how the...
Right. So the OTCs are not they're not electrical. They're just they're like plexiglass hexagons. You can kind of see them at the bottom of the screen there. And so what those do is they really stop the wind. Incoming solar radiation gets trapped. And so it's just like a greenhouse. Like if you go to like a nursery or something, like a plant nursery, it kind of acts the same way. So it just passively warms the tundra. Yeah. So it's cheap in the long term.
So we don't have to add anything. I think in the past they've tried adding and or removing snow, but with the OTCs, we're not adding anything other than the plexiglass around it. And it just acts as a mini greenhouse for it. So this has been going on for a really long time, but it is something that takes a long time to do. And so another layer of this project sort of kicked in I don't know, the later 90s, which is like the idea of, okay, instead of looking like piece by piece on the ground and counting the flowers and counting when things happen, let's just use satellites. We started putting satellites out. We have drones now. Let's look at these from this like big scale above. And we haven't done drones yet.
We have not. We're trying to do questions
drones
involved that have not been answered yet, as far as eligibility to fly the drone currently. But that's a whole different story. But the drones, like the aerial photography, especially in Barrow, we used to use kite photography. So a big kite that had a camera hanging from it. Here at Toolik, the wind is not really consistent because we're kind of in a bowl. So the wind just kind of swirls around. So we've tried big helium balloons as a way to get the cameras in the air to get more of stuff. We've in the past coordinated with NEON, the National Ecological Observing Network. They fly planes over occasionally to get aerial photography, and then of course satellites. So,
But this also poses a problem too, because when you're going from a small scale to a large scale, like how accurately do they match each other? And so this is where I think we sort of fit in the middle. And what we do primarily, what we do pretty much every day, is run the tram or the MISP. So you may hear the word MISP, you may hear the word tram. Those are both referring to this, which is a set of instruments that's sort of set up on a zip line to run across a segment of ground. And it's called the MISP because it has a bunch of different instruments. I think it's called the multiple instrument.
The Mobile Instrument and Sensor Platform.
Liza, you have cut out. We can't hear you. At least I can't hear you. Might be having a technical issue there. Liza? Okay, so they cut out. We'll stand by here for a moment. Sorry, Judy, will you send them a note in chat? Maybe she can read chat. They do have a backup computer set up in the lab if the wind got too much for them or they had technical issues. Looks like they did drop out and are probably headed into the lab. So just stand by. Oh.
Can you see us?
I don't see you. Oh,
Yes,
yep, now we can see you. Yep, we can see you. Did you stop sharing your screen?
That was weird. I'll reshare. There we go.
Okay. All right, we're back up to the screen that says MISP.
Yep. So this system was actually designed by Steve Oberbauer, right? He's the one that I think he got the original idea from researchers, I think at UC Santa Barbara, but then made this system for the Arctic. So it's been running since 2010. And yeah, like Liza said, it's got everything from that allows us to scale up from the phenology, the plot-based phenology measurements that we're doing, all the way up to the satellite stuff.
So this was one of the things that I found really cool, was like trying to connect the different levels of science. Often like we're so focused on like one level.
All right, Liza, you are frozen again. But we can see your screen. We just can't see you. You're frozen.
I think we should ask him to move inside because the internet outside that building is not that good.
Okay, yeah, they probably are getting that message. All right, please stand by, everybody. We'll see if they are getting our messages.
Well, I can tell you more about that mobile instrument and sensor platform if you want. So
Yep,
this was
please.
an idea from, there was a big project grant in Southern California called, it was the Center for Embedded Network Sensing. And the idea was to have these networked infomechanical devices that could collect data from all sorts of different sources. And one of the things they had was this idea of moving a platform along a cable that you could suspend above the canopy. And we set this up in Costa Rica. We had one of those in Costa Rica with towers over the canopy. And they did some work in the Alpine. And we kind of took that idea, and there was a guy at Barrow that was using basically a railroad track, which he put a spectrometer on, which was measuring the same things that satellites do. Of course, the problem with satellites in the Arctic is it's very often cloudy there. So very often you're not able to get any data for a long stretch of time because it's very often cloudy and you can't really get good imagery of anything that's using solar reflectance. Are they back?
I don't think so. Hold on, everyone, please stand by.
Hi.
Oh, there they are. All right.
They took my advice, even though they didn't hear me.
Welcome
They're
to
in-
the lab.
All right. Do you
We're
want
pulling
to?
up the PowerPoint right now.
Okay.
But yeah, so we set up this computer just in case we lost connection out there. All right. We're on MISP. And we can
Yeah,
probably go to
yeah.
this one.
Yeah, and just a heads up that Steve gave some additional information about the MISP. So I think we're good there.
Great, thank you. So this is the Toolik Transect. Do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so the MISP system in Toolik is actually, well, a lot like all of the systems in Naviat Creek, Barrow, and Akasuk. They're set up to span the dominant vegetation types. So here you can see that the one in Toolik, for example, spans dry heath. So you can see that kind of in orange, and then from the drone photo right there, it's outlined in orange. And then a little bit of shrub tundra, so shrub dominated tundra, and then moist acidic, which is your classic like tussock tundra. And so we set it up so that it would be across all that gradient, that moisture gradient, so that we can track the phenology of all those different types of tundra.
And I think Steve may have covered this while we were out, but there are a bunch of different sites for this as well. So we have two that we work on while we're here. There's one which is, we say up the hill, but it's kind of like the backyard or side yard of Toolik Field Station. And then there's one down the road. How many miles? Like,
it's like 8-10 miles.
Like 10 miles down the road at Naviat Creek. And then Steve was helping a group, which I think I see the group on the call that runs one in Barrow. I think, is it Mackenzie? Mackenzie Waves. So
Mackenzie, Nina, and Taylor.
So that group is running the same thing up in Barrow. And then there's also one in Akasuk. So we've got this going on in a lot of different places.
We had one in Greenland for the first 3 or 4 years, but then they discontinued it.
Yeah, the red dot is still on the map, actually.
Yeah. So there was one here and it's no longer there. So one of the things that I'm coming to learn, like as someone who's joining the group, is that setup of anything science takes the longest time and includes the least like traditional idea of science. So we went up and we were doing a lot of more like, I don't even know, carpentry and like building type things, like learning how to jackhammer things into the ground. Sarah and I were trying to build fences the other day. So there's a lot of stuff like this that goes along with field science that's not just the like actual science part, looking at the plants and stuff, because you have to make sure that everything's going to work. So these were some of the fun pictures. So the picture at the very beginning where I'm lying in the snow was one of these days when we were up and we had to dig out all of the stuff in the snow, and then I was tired and we took pictures in the snow instead of
It took a little bit longer this year because we actually had a bear attack on one of our towers. And so there was a considerable amount of rewiring and hooking things back up because there was an angry bear that came out of hibernation and was not happy.
So yeah, there's a lot going on with that this year, but we have not seen the bear yet.
Thank God too, Hannah, because I would be too scared. That's too much.
So another thing that I've sort of been picking up while here, and something that I really enjoy about working with this group, is that there's so many like different facets to the work that's being done here. And I feel like we just keep coming up with projects over and over. But Sarah here is running the berry survey, which I think was started in 2015, but Sarah has expanded it and is making it awesome. This photo was taken on Chandelar, right? Chandelar Shelf on the Dalton Highway. while we were doing berries. So I'm going to let Sarah talk about the berry survey and what's going on with that. And I can go to the next slide if you want.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. So the general idea of my project is to expand on, like Liza said, the data that has already been collected. So Jeremy and a few other researchers, along with Steve as well, instituted berry collection procedures in 2015 at Slope Mountain, Toolik Lake, and Naviat Creek. So the map highlighted in green on the left of the screen. So we have a really unique opportunity here where we can compare berry production over time and over space. So the new part that I added to this project is on the right, highlighted in purple. We have 6 collection areas that run along a latitudinal gradient on the Dalton Highway. So that's the comparison through space piece, right? So in the end, what I'm hoping to do is compare the 3 sites on the left to the 6 sites on the right and see how berry production differs between those and can be predicted by changing climatic variables.
So it was another chance for us to get back on the highway. We've been up and down it now twice, I think. And Sarah goes again up and down it in the fall to see both spring and fall seasonal berry stuff. And so this is something that was super cool. I really just like, it feels like every time I'm up here, it's like, we're just gonna add another piece to the project. But it was also very cool to see how we were collecting berries. So we actually like picked berries. I feel like my hands were stained purple for a week collecting the berries and then weighing the berries. But it was really exciting to do all of this work. And we know Sarah's gonna do this. I think you're coming back up next year, right?
Well, I don't know. I don't know about here. We'll see.
We're trying to get Sarah back up next year. So we weren't allowed to eat the berries that were in our collection thing, but I think we tried a few berries. None of them were really good yet, though. They were all wintered over berries, so that was really cute.
They're all nicely fermented.
Yeah,
Tasty.
they tasted like, I don't know, a little sour, a little too sour for my taste, but and like I've been saying, there's just so much going on. So Caroline, who's here actually right now, I'm going to turn this towards you. So Caroline is here and is working on a pollinator right now.
I don't know if you can see it.
It's a little bee.
Here's my little bumblebee that I caught yesterday.
So we have lots of groups of science up here. There's lots of projects going on. Caroline's another like segment going on of this group. So on the right, you can see the pollinator crew is out of Colorado College, Caroline, Alex, and Lucy. And then there are also other groups up here that I've had the pleasure of working with. So Sarah and I went out with Team Bull to help them fix fences and learn about what they're doing. And then actually right after this, I'm going on a trip to the burn with another group. So I'm really excited about that. I just love being up here and seeing all the like collaborative science that's going on. So yeah, and I think that's it. So there are times for questions. If you want to continue following, I'm still up here for a while. You can join PolarConnect by following this link. You can follow my specific one as well by going to this page. I post blogs regularly about my experiences. So there will be one tomorrow, probably about this and about going to the burn. So this is another way that you can participate. And then if there are any questions, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, it's a great presentation. Thank you so much for taking the time to share what you're doing up there at Toolik Field Station. I think there was a question from Lolly. It was about the berries, I believe. Have the species of, or no, I guess this is just in general. Have the species of plants changed over geological time in this area?
So over geologic time, so there's been multiple glaciations in Alaska, and so there's actually areas where the glaciers really didn't impact as much. And so there's been, everything kind of gets confined to this refugia, right? This area where they can kind of make do until the glaciers melt away, and then they repopulate from there. And there's a book called I think it's written by Eric Holtain, but I don't remember the title of it. Maybe somebody can put it in there, but it has a really good introduction into the geologic history and like the refugia of where the plants kind of hid out and bought their time during that during glaciation and then recolonized. So yeah, definitely.
There's a question about how many science teachers go up every summer. PolarTrek, I think, normally has 12 educators, roughly 12 educators per season. It's normally 6 that go to the Arctic and then 6 that go to the Antarctic. So the Antarctic teachers go for winter in Northern Hemisphere, but summer Antarctic field season. And I think there are normally 2 or 3 PolarTrek teachers that end up at Toolik Field Station in particular. But this year I'm the only one that was able to come up. So was really like ecstatic to join though this summer. But yeah.
Yes, thank you, Caitlin. It is the flora of Alaska. I couldn't remember the name of it. I just call it Holtain. So
Yeah, it's a big book.
it's a big book.
Let's see. It looks like there was a question about what is the benefit of having a science teacher on the team. So
there's so many. I mean, our project has been involved with PolarTrek for many years now. And it's fantastic, right? It's the opportunity for one to see it through a fresh person's eyes, but also to show them the daily life of science, right? Exactly what people do, and allow them to incorporate it into their lesson plan and bring that experience back of what it's like, and show students that
All right, I think
yeah.
Lost your sound.
we lost your sound. So even though you guys were having a good joke there and laughing, we didn't hear a darn thing. So if Jeremy could start over again, sorry about that.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I was just saying that we've been involved with PolarTrek for many years. And so from our perspective, it's great to get our science out there and also see it through fresh eyes. And we often get lots of good ideas from the questions that come from having new people up. But also, it's really nice to have the experience of what a scientist does on a daily basis go back to the classroom, right? Show people what I said was that scientists are people too. We're just normal people that do science for a living. And be able to incorporate the science that we do into the classroom setting and the lesson plans is fantastic. It's very rewarding.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeremy. Liza, you have a question that's for you. What is one thing that you'd like to do or see before you leave Toolik?
So the current thing, I've been told that every year there's like an item to see, and this year the item to see is the off ice, which is kind of like it means, what does it mean? Ice on top of ice. Ice on top. So basically it's a big buildup of ice that like when it melts out, it turns into like these really pretty like ice canyons and like little caves that you can go through. And they went up yesterday, 2 days ago,
Sunday.
and it hasn't fully melted out yet. So hoping to see it in all its beautiful canyon glory before I leave. I think that's the thing that I'm looking most forward to.
Oh yeah, that sounds awesome. I don't know if there's any other questions. I did have a question for you, Liza, while people are thinking. What is it that you want to take back into your classroom from this experience? Have you had a chance to think about that, or see how, or talk with Jeremy and the rest of the team about how you want to use this back at school when you get there again?
I think the theme that we've talked about a lot is there are two things. One, experimental design is an art. It's hard to come up with things that work well, and often you have to adjust as things come up. And so as much as we want things to be perfect, especially when you're in the field, it's not going to be. And so that kind of leads into part two, which is that science is messy, and that's okay. I think that's one of the things that's been really nice, is just like feeling like, yeah, it's going to be messy. We'll do as much as we can to ignore it or mitigate the mess, but it's okay for it to be messy. So many times, I think, especially when you're learning science for the first time, you want it to be perfect. You want everything to work out. You want it to be like the way we picture science to be in our heads. And it's often much more like, hey, I just wanted to do this one day. And so we went out and we took pieces of moss and started massing them, and then that turned into a project. So there we go. So I think that's the piece that's sticking with me right now.
Perfect. I love that. Great answer. Yes. Everybody's saying that's good. Oh, somebody asked, have you seen the wait, I just went away. Have you seen the Northern Lights even with so much daylight?
I have not.
We won't have the opportunity to see the Northern Lights until probably early August. When it gets dark enough at night, I'll start setting my alarm to get up at like 2 a.m. to look for the Northern Lights.
Very good. Yeah, they are quite spectacular, but they're going on all the time. You just can't see them, as Jeremy said. All right. A few things that before we wrap up here, I wanted to make sure that everybody has a link to your journal so they can post their questions and comments. So I posted that in there. This event is being archived, so again, we'll post that on the website. There should be a poll that shows up. If you take a moment, we'd like to get your feedback about this PolarConnect event. And I also want to let you know that we're really excited that NSF has continued to fund Polar TREC program. That's where our funding comes through, and that we also appreciate that ARCIS continues to think the Polar TREC is a significant program and support us through even when we don't have teachers out. So it's been quite the year, but we're glad that Liza and the team were able to go out this year. And we anticipate one other educator leaving in September on an expedition. So please continue to follow Polar TREC, use the resources that teachers have created for classrooms and informal environments. And thanks again to the team. Great job. It was really interesting to hear your presentation. So we'll let that go. If for anybody that wants to stick around after this event and say hi to the team, family, friends, Judy and I will stay online for that as well. And again, thanks a lot.